So I was on the train going to Vienna for a New Year's celebration. Awesome system, by the way. Trains here in Europe are just like, they're insanely good. It's just so hard to comprehend that you can hop on a train and then in 2.5 hours, you're in like a completely different world. And where I'm from in the US, we just don't pull it off. But anyways, this isn't like a pro trains video. So me and my friend, we get on the train and we're looking for our seats and we find a pair, we sit down, but then it turns out those aren't our assigned seats and we didn't figure out how that worked. But anyways, we ended up standing up and going to another place to sit, and we even asked the person if the seats were available, and they said yes. But I picked up on a bit of a like Irish accent. And so I said, oh, are you Irish, or like, where are you from? So it turns out this person was Irish Hungarian, which was really, really cool. Except they actually speak Hungarian in addition to English. But yeah, so anyway, since they speak English, we just start talking about like where they're from and like what they're doing. And so eventually they asked me the same thing, like, what do you do? And obviously I bring up the channel. And like at this point, I know that if I bring up my channel, I basically know inevitably what the conversation will lead to. Because then they say, what's your channel about? And I say veganism, and then it begins. But honestly, I'm really happy to talk about it. I don't mind talking about it. I actually love talking about it. And so then, yeah, they say, okay, do you mind if I ask you some questions? And like I said, I'm more than happy to talk about it. And so they start asking me about a lot of different topics. And if you're vegan, you know what I'm talking about. You usually know what kind of questions to expect, or like what kind of questions you're gonna get. And so what's interesting is that they bring up that they're mostly vegetarian. They see eye to eye on a lot of parts about veganism and about the treatment of animals and impact on the environment and all that stuff. And so yeah, they started asking me, honestly, it feels like we covered most of the topics, like it's natural, it's cultural, but there were some things that stood out to me that I thought were worth sharing, because ultimately they asked me about hunting, and like that's why they're mostly vegetarian. They don't really see a problem to go out and kill an animal to eat the animal. And the argument wasn't necessarily it was because other animals do it, like it wasn't a nature argument. I don't remember exactly, but I think the underlying theme was something like, because we're smarter than them, we can do whatever we want to them. And so if someone brings this up, there's usually a couple ways that you can talk to them about it. But I think that the easiest way to talk about it that kind of captures everything quickly and usually gets a quick agreement from someone is if you simply bring up that, what if there were an alien species that were so much smarter than us and they came down and the difference in intellect was equivalent, between us and the animals we hunt and the aliens and us. And would we be okay with them going out to hunt us just because they could, just because they took pleasure in it? And so usually the answer is going to be no, like I wouldn't want that to happen to me. So then it begs the question, why would you do it to others? And so they agreed with that for the most part. And I think that is an important point to discuss with people who aren't vegan or haven't really thought deeply about the issue, because even before I was vegan, I really didn't see the issue, or hadn't thought deeply about killing others for the sake of killing them. I definitely saw an issue with factory farming and torturing animals, but the concept of killing them, now I say it sounds kind of ridiculous, but the concept of killing animals didn't seem like a problem. So I think it's important to challenge people and have them think about that on a deeper level, because we're so desensitized, or because it's so normalized to kill animals just because, And so then after that, they asked me if I've ever heard of the phrase, no ethical consumption under capitalism. I told them that yes, I had heard of it. And so the main point that they were trying to make is that because everything is so disconnected and the processes for which we get the products that we consume are so big, inevitably there's going to be some form of exploitation or something that is unethical somewhere in the process. And so that it's impossible to consume something without contributing to something unethical. And so what I said back to that, while I do agree that, there is no ethical consumption under capitalism, there is no ethical consumption of animal products under any system. So for example, in the production of other consumer goods like clothing, we can find better and more ethical ways to produce them, but they aren't inherently unethical. And at the end of the day, what separates animal consumption from other industries is that violence is essentially the product that you're paying for, or better said, it's a necessary component of the process. And so there is no ethical way to do something that at its core comes from an unethical practice, like killing, you know? Like, think about other business industries that are inherently unethical. Think about human trafficking. At its core, even if there's a ton of other steps that go into it, there is no ethical way to traffic someone who doesn't want to be trafficked. There is no right way to do something unethical. And so as a counter, they brought up fast fashion and talking about how exploitation is a necessary component of fast fashion to reach the prices that they want to sell at and to be able to produce as much inventory as they do. And so I asked them if they thought that buying a t-shirt was just as ethically bad as going to a dogfighting show. And so they did acknowledge that those weren't the same. But what they did say was that going to a dogfighting show was a much more direct way to pay for abuse than buying a hamburger. They said that they thought that buying a hamburger was the same as buying a t-shirt in their eyes. And that's primarily due to what they were talking about earlier, about how the hamburger and the t-shirt are both only parts of these webs of processes that inevitably have some form of exploitation in them. To which point I said, ultimately, even if it comes to fashion, if you had shirt A where someone had to die and shirt B where someone did not have to die, wouldn't it be wrong to ever choose shirt A? And essentially, that's what distinguishes all these other products that people like to use to deflect, like buying coffee, wearing clothes, because these are not situations where you have two clear options of death or no death. And if they were, it would be similarly urgent to talk about, just like veganism. And that is the beauty of veganism. We do have that clear option. And I didn't say this, but looking back, maybe I should have said something like, do you really think that buying a t-shirt is just as bad as having someone's dead body served to you? But anyways, ultimately, this is where we came to an impasse. But the conversation didn't end badly or anything. Like, it ended extremely amicably. It turned out that they were a philosophy student and they loved having these types of conversations anyway, so. And the thing is I do try to come off as rational as possible, because the way that I see it as vegans, we are by default fighting an uphill battle with anybody we have a discussion about it with, because of the negative and unflattering perception that people have about vegans. And hopefully the next time that person thinks about veganism, they'll think about the positive interaction that they had with me, and they'll be more willing to entertain the ideas that we talked about. I hope so anyways. I won't lie though, it is disappointing to run into someone that you think so similarly to, but then you reach this frankly bizarre impasse that, if you take a step back, revolves around one side saying killing is not okay and the other side saying killing is sometimes okay. I mean, I don't know, like, that's how I see it. Let me know below if you disagree. And of course I'm talking about in the realm of like a civilized society where we have supermarkets. And I want to contrast that with the encounters that I've had with people who are watching slaughterhouse footage. So sometimes I do cubes of truth, which, if you don't know what that is, it's where basically some people are holding TVs of slaughterhouse footage and people come and if they're interested in the footage, you talk to them about what they're seeing. And the conversation is so drastically different when people are watching animals being brutalized before their eyes. Like, I never have heard plants feel pain in that situation. And like I said, when it's happening right in front of their eyes, people are much more likely to admit right off the bat, yep, killing is killing, and yeah, that's wrong. And yeah, it takes like no convincing in those situations. But anyways, y'all, that's the story. I hope y'all enjoyed it. Remember to consider liking, subscribing if you enjoy the content of this video. Don't forget to take your B12 supplement, and I'll see y'all in the next one.